Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, Hap, we get it. Short quills this, muzzle curve that, metal shoes this, and almond ears yada yada yada. What I am describing to you, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call the Sonic model discourse. It's basically the side of the community where you see the same people talking about how off-putting the modern Sonic renders are based on the little details that add up. You know, stuff like the butt brown, the ugly ass mouse, the shade of blue Sonic is. Okay, I kind of understand the hate for that one. And others take the conversation way too literally, but no, this isn't one of those videos going over the issues with the models. There's already enough videos and threads about it to where I just be repeating the same points anyways. But I do want to talk about another visual aspect I feel the franchise is currently struggling in. See, since we're now living in a fully new generation, we've seen iconic gaming IPs take more risk within its visuals. Stuff like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and as recently as the new Bubsy 4D, yes, I'm just as surprised as you are that this exists. We see these characters being taken into new experimental directions while showing creativity through the shifts in its art direction. While Sonic kinda hasn't really been doing that, if anything has gone quite stale as of late. And by as of late, I mean as early as Sonic Lost World, which I feel to remind you, that shit was almost 12 years ago. Yes, I do feel extremely old, thank you for asking, and outside of an exception or two, I don't feel like things have gotten any better in this department. If anything, I feel it's only went into a different direction now compared to Lost World. So today I want to talk about Sonic's current art direction. The good, the bad, why there's a lot of negative discussion around it, why the art direction in something like Unleashed is more widely praised compared to something like Lost World, and what I feel they could do to fix the issue at hand. Okay, let's just talk about Sonic's model real quick. Sonic's character model has been the main source of discussion for quite some time now. From the shoes, the muzzle, the quills, the eyes, whatever it is, I guarantee at least 5 people have talked about it already. Now look, I kinda get an understanding of both sides of the whole discourse. There's a reason why people do get constantly annoyed over the discourses around Sonic's character model, because while I do agree that the model doesn't look necessarily that great, you also don't really notice its issues immediately. Okay, show of hands, how many of y'all actually cared about the muzzle curve before you saw that tweet regarding the Sonic Team logo? Hell, I wouldn't even be surprised if you don't even know what I'm talking about right now. It's only really something you notice once it's pointed out to you. So I can understand why many find this whole discourse annoying or somewhat pointless. But then again, I also don't really like Sonic's character model. Yep, I'm on that side. It doesn't help that the way that the characters are posed and the expressions that they make are just so lacking and off-putting. Maybe not to a general audience who would just take a glance at them, but when they're fully displayed right in front of you for well over a decade, the cracks really begin to show over time. It's like taking a glance at a butterfly from a distance to having the motherfucker all up in your face. I think this type of discourse became a lot more prominent around the time of Sonic Forces' release. What the fuck? I told my neighbor to shut up. Where the model was rebuilt off of the previous one used with the Hedgehog Engine 1, where they kinda doubled down on its overall look and gave it a much more cheap aesthetic in my opinion. See, the current Forces/Frontiers model was built off of the Marza model used in Sonic Unleashed. With that game having a more universal art direction, the general aesthetics complemented Sonic's character model really well. It's why Unleashed primarily stays out of the discourse, because the art direction in that game is so cohesive, everything blends together, and nothing of note really sticks out in an inherently bad way. It's also why a lot of criticism for Sonic Lost World was mainly drawn from the aesthetics. Because believe it or not, putting an expressive yet somewhat grounded Sonic model in an overly bright cartoony environment can make Sonic look a bit out of place. And it arguably only gets worse with the current model. Honestly, the only reason why it doesn't look so abysmal in Frontiers is because of the texture. Otherwise, this has the exact same problems as it did in Forces. And it's also why he looks really bad in Shadow Generations. You can argue that it's just a matter of how they're animated. If they push more dynamic posing, then there'd be no issue, right? If they just push Sonic's animations and expressions more, there's no reason to complain about the model, right? Well, for one, it's more about how the animation and design go hand in hand, both areas doing their share to make the character look good. And two, you can say this about literally any Sonic model. These models aren't the most hideous things out there, burning my eyes every second I look at them, but they do have some fundamental issues that hold them back. But the models are only a representation of a much bigger issue at hand, and that being the game's general visual aesthetics. Now, I already said my piece with Lost World, but I think the biggest issue with that game's aesthetics is how much it doesn't really represent Sonic. Like, it's not really a good sign when you can replace Sonic with a character like, I don't know, Donald Duck, and it would probably be just as, if not more fitting. Hell, I'd argue that Lost World isn't even fully consistent on its own, as it attempts to take aspects from other platformers to form its own identity, when it just causes the whole game's visuals to clash even more. And jumping forward a bit, I think Frontiers has the exact same issue, just on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. While Lost World leans towards the bright cartoony aesthetics, Frontiers has a direction that's more surreal. And because of that, it causes the Sonic elements such as the rails, the boost pads, and the springs found throughout the open areas to stick out like a sore thumb. And look, for as much as I really like this game, I'd argue the inconsistencies and sheer lack of cohesion causes this to possibly have the worst art direction in any Sonic game. And no, it's not solely because, oh, there are floating platforms or rails in the sky, lots of Sonic games have that. It's more so how the assets are implemented. There's nothing that tells me that they're ingrained or even somewhat fit in within the game's biomes. It just feels like a hodgepodge of different assets to make sure it plays like a Sonic game. In games like Generations, the assets were all built from the ground up for each respective level, giving each of the differing aesthetics to have cohesion within their respective portions of the game. Why do you think that upon Frontiers' reveal, so many people were making Sega hire this man jokes? It's because, and with all due respect when I say this, it looks like someone made this with the fucking Unreal Engine.
It's not that bad, just do it, bro. Just do it, bro.
And then Forces just kinda has its own problem altogether, where it lacks any real sense of direction. You have stages that go for that same look to that of Unleashed and Generations like Metropolitan Highway and Sunset Heights, which do look pretty good for the most part. But then you also have a version of Green Hill that looks straight out of fucking Roblox. Do you see the issue? Now let me make this clear, I personally think Forces and Frontiers both look really good, in a technological sense. It goes back to what I said about the models, as one aspect does all of the heavy lifting in order for things to somewhat work. And in this case, it's definitely down to the technology, mainly the lighting and texturing. But let's say Frontiers was released on weaker hardware per se. The cracks between the art direction would begin to show, as the technology would not be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Oh yeah, the Nintendo Switch exists. While again, it doesn't look ungodly atrocious or anything, it gets the job done, the issues with the game's general aesthetics become more apparent because of the weaker hardware. The frame rate is cut in half, the textures are a lot less detailed, the lighting is worse, and everything just looks a lot muddier. You just don't get the advantages from a next-gen console like the PS5 or a PC, which again makes the issues with the game's general aesthetics much more apparent. Now, I want to give a quick mention to Sonic Superstars. Personally, I think it's a great Sonic game, and one of the areas I think we don't give enough credit to is how it looks. Now, it's not anything revolutionary or breathtaking like Mario Wonder, but you can tell that the game attempts to recapture the old 90s classic Sonic art style. It's vibrant, it's abstract, and it has some really neat stylization that make it feel like a Sonic game. And, say it with me now, it feels cohesive. Okay, why didn't you say it with me? Now I look fucking stupid, you asshole. So what's the main takeaway in all this? What is the problem with Sonic's current art direction? It's non-existent. No, I don't mean it in the literal sense. Of course there's art direction in every Sonic game. But I think the main issue with the art direction is that it often feels directionless. What I mean by that is, games like Lost World, Forces, Frontiers, they don't fully commit to the art styles they're going for. There's usually inconsistencies or design choices that clash with others, causing a break within the commitment. It's why whenever the community has these art-related discourses, we don't talk about Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Generations, or even Sonic Superstars. They just simply don't have those issues, at least not to the extent as other games in the series. Why does it matter though? Why fix what isn't broken? What makes this type of discussion even important to begin with? Now, let me make one thing clear. I will always prioritize how I feel about the gameplay when criticizing a game, just like how I prioritize great characters when criticizing a show or movie. But that doesn't inherently mean there isn't more to a game than just how it plays. And while those aspects aren't enough for me to base my entire opinion on said game, they often can enhance my viewpoint of it. For example, I view Sonic Superstars on the same level as Sonic Mania, but there are aspects regarding Superstars that do make me prefer it. Not all the time, mind you, but enough to where I do see it as an equal to Mania. And as a reminder, video games are art at the end of the day. It's perfectly valid to criticize art if you think it could be further pushed or because you could see aspects improve. It's why you see a lot of comparisons being made to other games with more stylization to it, because Sonic fans know Sonic is capable of having something like that. And if you don't see it that way or have problems with Sonic's art direction, then that's fine. Your opinion is no less valid than mine. I genuinely mean that. And by all means, art is subjective. There's no opinion that's right, there's no opinion that's wrong. Do I want them to make changes to Sonic's current model? Yes. Do I want Sonic to be firing on all cylinders? Definitely. Do I want the games to commit to a fully stylized aesthetic in the future? Absolutely. But it's not going to be the end of the world if it doesn't end up happening. Though I do personally hope that this is something that Sega or Sonic Team does consider. Because if they're serious about firing on all cylinders and wanting to become a major competitor again, then I personally think that little changes like that would benefit them in the long run. Alongside keeping up the qualities of the games, of course. They've been doing pretty good. I just wanted to make this video to add more nuance to this whole Sonic model discourse I've been seeing, because even though I don't like the current model and I hate a lot of the renders it spawned, I think it does stem from a bigger issue at hand. Though Sega, please do something about these mounts. I fucking cannot stand these things anymore. Also, side note, Bubsy is now voiced by Sean Chiplock, who voices my boy Subaru from ReZero and Majima from Licorice Recoil, so I win again, motherfucker!